Hello and welcome back to more Reddit stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Today, at what point did you realize your ex was crazy? We dated for a few weeks and then the night came to get down. Since having sex doesn't happen too often for me, I don't typically keep a condom in my wallet or on my person. She said she wants to fuck and I tell her, I don't have a condom. To which she replies, it's fine. Being the horny non-thinker I was, I got to work. As I'm ready to come I start pulling out. She grabs my hips and pulls me back inside her and says, "Into me." And of course that being the hottest thing I've ever heard a woman say to me, I finish in her. A few weeks go by and she tells me she's late and to be prepared to be a father. Not the most ideal situation but I put myself in it. I'm going to see it through. Another 2 days go by and she's in tears. I ask what the matter was and she said she got her period. I looked confused and she yelled, I wanted to have a child with you and it didn't work. Now we have to try again. I've never ghosted someone so fast in my life. She pulled out a knife and started running in circles around the house with it. I was on a bus back home the next day. Edit. I guess I should provide a little context. The short version. Right before that, she was mad about something her cousin had done. So she came in to complain to me about it. I was busy reading Harry Potter and not listening to what she was saying. So she hauled off and punched me in the balls. She immediately had my attention. I jumped up all, what the fuck? And she started to try to punch me. I grabbed her by her tiny wrists and stopped her. She settled down a little and I let her go. Then she went and grabbed a knife and starts to circle the house. In the end she said she wanted to cut herself and not me, but I wasn't cool with any of that. The long version involved her dad raping her, her mother in prison. She lived with her grandma. She got pregnant. Her grandma died of cancer. She lived with a teacher. The teacher kicked her out because we made the sexy times. She lived with grandma. She lost the baby. We graduated. We got on a bus and moved across the country to live with her aunt. And then the short version. Got mad at me because I couldn't get to the VA hospital that was a little over an hour away from my house. I was cooking dinner for my 2 young children and don't have any family near to watch them on such short notice. He said I obviously didn't care about him at all and he wished he would have just died in Iraq. You know, standard mental abuse. I have since found out that he is a con artist and 3-time felon who was never in the army and ultimately wasn't in the hospital that day, just trying to get attention and knew I couldn't get to the hospital. So yeah, I'm currently working on collecting information on his past to get him for stolen valor. He shouldn't have tried to mindfuck someone who was raised by Marines and takes stolen valor as seriously as I do. Eat shit, dick. Man, I was such a dumbass. So many warning signs. She used to disappear and not come home at night, not answer her phone, etc. Then she got pregnant and broke the news by telling me that she flushed her birth control. I respect a woman's right to choose. So now I have a lovely 12-year-old daughter. I still didn't leave. When my daughter was born she started doing the same thing again, drinking, screaming, etc. I broke up with her and we started sharing our daughter 50-50. A bit later I transferred to university and stupidly decided to give it one more shot. After living at university with her and our daughter, I found out all of her trips back home were to have an affair. I was like, what the fuck? I am in college. I work 2 jobs. Take care of the baby, you know. So I noped out. I have had full-time custody of my daughter for 10 years. And her craziness gave me the best gift I have ever received. Not really a relationship, but a first date. I was 19 and a junior in college at the time. One of my TAs asked me out. I believe he was 3 years older than I. He picked me up at my apartment and I let him in while I finished getting ready. He started telling me how he could teach me so much about the world and life in general, and how I had so much to learn. Blah blah blah. Basically, he was saying I was his inferior but he'd be happy to teach me until I was more at his level. It was really a WTF moment. Why someone would think the way to a girl's heart was to disparage her intelligence and tell her how superior you are. I showed him to the door and locked it behind him. I was seriously waiting for him to fuck with my final grade, but he didn't, which is good because I would have rained some shit down on his stupid head. She demanded that I hand over my debit card because she, who had never been employed, was clearly better with money than me, screamed and fought until I gave in, then spent $400 of my money, our money, after less than a year supposedly on the wedding of someone I went to high school with. Then she got pregnant, then she lost the baby, and told me that I killed my baby, not by violence, but by not obeying her every command as if it were the word of God. That my refusal to acquiesce to her increasingly insane demands stressed her out so much she miscarried. I cried for the first time in 15 years, like a bitch, curled in the bathtub, and no doubt, she was a self-centered cunt who always played the victim. Went to McDonald's where a pretty 19-year-old blonde girl took my order. I got my food to go and left. As I was leaving I looked back and saw her cleaning the windows. She looked at me and signed, "Call me." So I went back in and she gave me her number. Cool so far, right? So we made plans for her to come over that night. I went to pick her up and she had this big bag full of clothes and a puppy. She came over and that's when I realized she moved in. She wasn't there to date me, she was there to move in. Next day she goes to work and she leaves all her shit there. So I'm alone with all her stuff, and I do what any normal person who just met a girl who moved in does. I snooped. I went in her purse and pulled out a piece of paper. It was a doctor's prescription with the handwritten instructions that said in big letters, "No sex for 2 weeks." It was dated 2 days earlier. Apparently she had chlamydia or something. Took me about a week to get her and that dog out of the house, meaning it took her a week to find another dude to stay with. He decided to make a grand gesture for my birthday, which was about 6 months after the breakup. He had a cake made in the shape of Australia. He had it shipped to me in a locked steamer trunk. Keys in the card. All of this was based off of a line from Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. She may cry but her tears will dry when I hand her the keys to a shiny new Australia. This is after I found out that I was the other woman, and I had started to date someone else. He was just painfully awkward. Side note, the cake was dry. I broke up with a guy in senior year of high school. 2 weeks later he called me to tell me that he thought we should break up, since he had refused to allow me to break up with him earlier, despite the fact that I said I was done. He said that if I came to my senses he'd consider taking me back. I told him that was never going to happen, but wished him luck. The fun epilogue of this story comes 2 years after that. I logged into AIM to chat with my college best friend and lo and behold, he logged on. I said hi and asked how he was doing. He said he had a fiance but that there was an issue and asked for a favor. I asked what it was, because I was curious. He asked for a picture of my feet. When I asked why, he explained that the only way he could get off was by picturing me coming home from a long day of work on my feet and making him clean my sweaty feet with his tongue. If he could see my feet, I was pretty sure he could get over it. I asked if he'd tried role-playing with his fiance, since it was almost certainly the power dynamic he liked and not specifically me, especially since he and I never did anything remotely like that. He said that they'd tried, but it didn't work and it was my feet, or he couldn't get hard. He then asked if I'd be willing to boss around him and the woman he was going to marry so that he could maybe come from sex with her. I logged off of AIM and have never logged in again. If we break up, it's just a matter of time before you ask for your laptop back, and I use it for school, so I'm going to have to drop out and my kids are going to be raised in poverty. Do you really want that on your conscience? Edit. I lent him my extra laptop before I realized he bleeds all the women in his life dry of all their resources. I wasn't about to let him keep it after the shit he put me through. I got my laptop back when we broke up and he destroyed the power cord and messed up the laptop to the point that it wouldn't run. I fixed it, but lesson learned. Done. That's some fine crazy logic right there. I'm just kidding. We are not really broken up. Me. WTF. No, sorry, that's not how this works. Edit. Some more info. She broke up with me over the phone, during which I tried to rationalize why, how, what went wrong, etc. I talked with her for a good 30 minutes at least, but she was content on saying sorry, it's over. I rationalized and accepted and was ready to move on. Heart tender obviously, since the relationship was real for me at the time. At this point is when she said, just kidding. We are not really broken up. I was just testing you to see if you would fight for the relationship. I about lost my shit. No, that's not how any of this works. I hate to break it to you, but your plan backfired. We really are broken up because you do not test me like this. Not like this. Broke up with douchebag ex while in Mexico with my mom. He said I cheated on him and told me my dad died to get away from my spoiled princess ways. He spent the next 6 hours calling me and my mom trying to win me back. Roaming charges were disgusting, so we didn't answer or read the texts. Way too expensive. Finally my mom got pissed and answered the phone. He was breathing heavy. My mom asked what he wanted. He said, I just want to talk to her. You have to let me talk. My mom said, fine, talk. He said, all Sarah had to do was. And then my mom hung up cause she didn't want to hear more about what I did wrong. After reading over 100 texts about what I did wrong, how awful I was, how much he misses me, the girl he slept with, the lies he told me, the apologies for the lies, the endless litany of how he'll change, etc, etc. I turned off my phone and didn't turn it on until the next morning. That morning I had almost 100 missed calls and 18 voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. Fuck you, Ken. 1. Played Smack My Bitch Up at an uncomfortably loud volume when I got into the car on our first date. 2. Told a Holocaust joke on our first real date. Knew half my family is Jewish. I asked him not to tell jokes like that, so he told a racist one. 3. On our first date told me he planned to have a wife and child in the next few years. I was in my early 20s and had just gotten out of a particularly painful long-term relationship, which he knew about. 4. Told me he didn't know what it was like to feel empathy, and that he had never felt bad for someone or anything he had ever done, even when he knew it was mean/cruel. 5. Said the reason for my previous partner's suicide was because I wouldn't let anyone get close to me. The funny thing is I don't actually think I have bad taste in men. All of the above examples are from the beginning stages of relationships/dates that I get the fuck out of. I'm friends with all my previous partners but one. We just aren't the same people anymore. And my fiance is the most wonderful man I've ever met. And you've made it to the end. Thank you friends for listening to another story. I hope to see you again soon.